Okay. So first off, I'd like to thank everyone for being here. As educators and lovers of education, we will never stop learning, right? And also, I'd like to thank Sir Jason for helping me out with my slides. So I'm Therese Villarante, and I have been teaching literature for nearly 9 years now. And it has truly been one of my life's greatest joys. So before we talk about our ideas on discussing literature, let's first talk about why is literature even more important now in a pandemic. There's always been some form of discouragement towards the pursuit of the arts. But more than the question of pursuing it professionally, literature, it's a way of life. Storytelling, it's a way of life. So let's refer to this quote from Dead Poets Society. Okay. We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race. And the human race is filled with passion. And medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits. Yes, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. So being alive is important. Food and money, it's important, but it's not enough. That's why we love. That's why we value our relationships, why we ache and long for something. That's why we have dreams. And literature, it allows us to understand and feel that deeply. So literature is even more important in a pandemic because it reminds us of our humanity. It allows us to truly value human life because people are more than just numbers and statistics. We are individuals. We are people who love and are loved. So now let's move on to our ideas on teaching literature. So number one, you have read, read, read. So our job is to tell stories. So of course, the more you add to yourselves, the more that you can actually give to your students. I hope that you've already cultivated that deep love for reading and telling stories. So I always tell my students that everyone loves to read. For those who say they don't, it's just because they haven't found their right book yet. So how do you find that right book? So the first one is to explore the genres. Uh, One way to do that, explore the genres based on your passionate beliefs and interests. So take, for example, if you are into discovering your identity or your voice, then you can actually check out coming of age stories or maybe young adult fiction. Or if it's mystery, if it's romance, then explore the genres. Also, if the story is already provided in your syllabus, just remember that writers write about fundamental truths and it is more complete. You will find some of your truth in there too. There's a reason why these stories are timeless classics. So I hope that you also enjoy finding out why and delivering that message to your students as well. And also read what your students read. It's greatly insightful and helpful as their mentor to understand where they're coming from, to empathize with them, to know what they're going through. So next, according to Lawrence Perrin, literature does not tell us about an experience, it allows us to imaginatively participate in it. So literature is to imaginatively participate, meaning to say it's just not enough to tell stories. We have to show to our students how it can personally mean to them. I mean, we can have all the money in the world, but it is actually only in reading that we know what it's like to survive the Hunger Games or go to Hogwarts or be deathly afraid of fake parents who will replace our eyes for buttons. So reading, storytelling, it is an adventure. It's like Alice in Wonderland. It's falling into this rabbit hole where anything can exist, and you come out of it and come back to reality, but you can't see reality the way it was before because you are forever changed by the stories that you read. Okay, so a good example for that is this poem by Joyce Kilmer about trees. And I think you've already encountered this poem once or twice in your life. I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. And the thing is, we could be given all the scientific facts in the world about trees. And yes, that's a beautiful thing to learn. But at the same time, it is an experience unlike any other when we actually read a poem about it. Because we also appreciate the experience of Joyce Kilmer and also go back to our own experience of what it's like to stand under its shade or breathe in the fresh air. So, artists and educators, what we actually do is that we observe and we point people to the direction where to the direction where they don't take things for granted, like a tree. A tree has always been there, but it's important that you appreciate it and that you never take it for granted. So that's what we do. We observe and we help people see also things that they shouldn't take for granted. And another example is this poem by Charles Simic. It's a very short poem, but it's also one of my most favorites. And he said, "Green Buddhas on the fruit stand. We eat the smile and spit out teeth." What do you think of when you hear those lines? We eat the smile and spit out the teeth. It's confusing, right? But this poem is actually entitled Watermelon. And we eat the smile and spit out the teeth, the seeds. So the amazing thing with literature is that when someone says watermelon, we immediately think only of the fruit. But because of Charles Simic, it's like we've seen a watermelon for the first time in our lives. So that's what literature is also. It's about taking something that is so familiar, like watermelon, like love, like friendship, and giving it new and deeper meaning. Okay, so now let's go to number 2. You have allow vulnerability. So open your heart. The humanities, it's about being human. So of course, a lot of feelings are going to be involved. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will share personal details about your own life, but it is important that your students know that you've also suffered, that you've also grieved, that you've been heartbroken, that you've also lost, because then they will know that they are not alone. Vulnerability, it paves way for difficult discussion, meaning to say, please also allow in your discussions complex human emotions. Take, for example, negative emotions. It's just as necessary as positive ones. Can we move to the next slide, please? So Victor Hugo, he said, there is something more terrible than a hell of suffering, a hell of boredom. Because when we suffer, when we are weak, when we are in pain, that's actually where the learning is. That's where the growth is. So always allow that in your discussions. Okay? And please also never shame your students for their feelings, their thoughts, and for what they don't know yet. Because no one learns when they're shamed, and no one learns when they're afraid to be themselves, to speak up, and to make mistakes. So always allow vulnerability. Uh, this next slide, it's actually a song. It's written by Mr. Rogers, and he is a kids talk show host. Uh, Here, he shows us how through vulnerability, he is able to deliver a very powerful lesson on anger for children. Anger is a very complex emotion and much more when you explain it to children, but he actually delivered it so well through a song. So let's just read that last stanza. I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish. I can stop, stop, stop anytime. And what a good feeling to feel like this and know that the feeling is really mine. Know that there's something deep inside that helps us become what we can. For a girl can be someday a woman, and a boy can be someday a man. So here he tells children that it's okay to be angry, but also, what do you do with that anger? Do you use it to become destructive, or do you use it to create better change? And another example on the power of vulnerability. Brene Brown, she wrote a manifesto based on her interviews from students and employees of different companies. And this is actually what she wrote. We want to show up. We want to learn and we want to inspire. We are hardwired for connection, curiosity, and engagement. We crave purpose and we have a deep desire to create and contribute. We want to take risks, embrace our vulnerabilities, and be courageous. When learning and working are dehumanized, when you no longer see us and no longer encourage our daring, or when you only see what we produce or how we perform, we disengage and turn away from the very things that the world needs from us: our talent, our ideas, and our passion. What we ask is that you engage with us, show up beside us, and learn from us. Feedback is a function of respect. When you don't have honest conversations with us about our strengths and our opportunities for growth, we question our contributions and your commitment. Above all else, we ask that you show up, let yourself be seen, and be courageous. Dare greatly with us. So, literature is allowing ourselves to be seen and heard just as we are, and doing the same for our students as well. Okay, now let's go to number 3, which is in relation with vulnerability, you always have to explore themes of humanity. So, take for example, uh, if we talk about the elements of play or drama, we just don't talk about the elements. We also talk about self belief, about collaboration, about teamwork. And another example, I was given this topic on Christian Andersen's The Mermaid. And it's not just a story about a mermaid who falls in love with the prince. It's actually a very human story about taking risks, about growing up and finding out that some things are not meant for you. And sometimes, no, most of the time, or always, society stereotypes can work extremely against us. But still, who do we choose to become even then? Okay, and next, you have number 4, which is ask the important questions. So make sure you ask questions that allow your students to reflect in their own lives, that allow them to question the world, that allows them to also realize the meaningful, important aspects of life. When my students and I discussed this very beautiful poem by Edith Tiempo, this poem. It's about finding true love in the most ordinary days, in the smallest of objects. I always allot this one discussion. The poem is on the next slide, by the way. Yes, that one. I always have an R wherein I just ask them the question, what is your bonsai moment? What is that one small, ordinary moment in your life that you know is actually true love? And I'm always surprised and amazed at how strong my students actually are, what they are going through and what they survive in this lifetime. So as a teacher, you're not only teaching your students, but you're also learning so much from them as well. And also, lastly, we have the activities. So number 5, have activities that allow us mentors to recognize. So recognize the spark of interest or delight and can help an individual drill down to the specific components of the discipline that match that individual's capacity and passion. So our students, they're likely at their young age not aware of their strengths and the things that they need to improve on. So, as someone who interacts with them and sees their capabilities, let's also point out to them what their strength is and also the things that they need to improve on. Because when they realize that that they're good at something and they can be great at it, that can really help them and that can really guide them to the right path. So I hope that you help your students, you point them towards the right path. And then you have encourage. Lead students to believe that they can achieve something that seemed improbable or impossible before we met them. They don't allow students to succumb to self doubt for too long or the notion that their dreams are too large for them. I truly hope that your classroom is a safe space for your students because they might not have people who believe in them even in their own homes. So I hope that you are their cheerleader because everybody needs someone who believes in them. I have that in my life, and I tell you, my life would have totally been different if I didn't have people who believed in me. So be that for your students, believe in them, encourage them. Next, you have facilitate, offer advice and techniques, paving the way for students and even allowing them to falter a bit while standing by to help them recover and learn from their mistakes. Uh, Through time and experience, we've gotten good at what we do. And I hope that we also really root for our students. So we equip them with knowledge, with skills, with everything that they need in this lifetime, not just academically, but the values, also instill to them the values. So equip them, facilitate. And the hope is that our students maybe one day can also surpass surpass us, which means that we've done our jobs well. Let's help them achieve their maximum potential. And lastly, you have stretch. Push students past what they see as their limits. We prevent them from doing less with their lives. A true mentor reminds them that their goal should never be to be average at their pursuits. Have your students break out from their comfort zones. Make them see that they are so much more capable than they first presumed themselves to be. So have them stretch. And at the same time, show to them that fear, it's something that will never go away. But it should never stop us from doing things that we love because our greatest fears can also come from the things that we love most. So breaking out from their comfort zone, teach them the importance of that and what it can do for their lives because taking an opportunity can actually lead to so many more beautiful opportunities. And now we've come to the end of our talk, and I want to share with you this very amazing poem by Rumi. It's a gift. He said, he wrote, "You have no idea how hard I've looked for a gift to bring you. Nothing seemed right. What's the point of bringing gold to the gold mine or water to the ocean? Everything I came up with was like taking spices to the Orient. It's no good giving my heart and my soul because you already have these. So I've brought you a mirror. Look at yourself and remember me." Let this be our legacy, that we are mirrors and that our students can see in themselves the power of their voice, their talent, their possibilities, and they may forget about the elements and the theories, but always the hope is that when they come out of our classrooms, they are better and kinder people. That we don't only tell good stories, but become good stories to tell. And that is my talk. I hope that you learned a lot from my talk. And I also hope that you truly learn to love literature because what we do is important. And I hope that you believe that what we do is important. Telling stories is important. So thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here.